Despite the many issues that arose after the National Workers' Union presented its delegates list to the People's National Party, the People's National Party's Appeals Committee has accepted the National Workers' Union delegates listing for the presidential elections that are scheduled for November 7, 2020. As the lead-up to the PNP presidential elections draws closer, of course, the heat that is being generated is hotter than lava erupting from a volcano. There have been many issues, there have been many statements, and of course, despite Lisa Hanna mentioning many things, she has not made up her mind about choosing either Peter Bunting or Norman Horne for the vacant Senate position that exists on the opposition benches in the upper house. People's National Party's Internal Appeals Committee has accepted the National Workers' Union's delegates for the presidential polls on Saturday, November 7th. Of course, more than 36 delegates that were selected by the National Workers' Union will be added to the voters' list for the People's National Party's presidential elections, which is scheduled for November 7, 2020. This is a ruling that came from the Internal Appeals Committee on Monday, November 2. The chairman of the Internal Appeals Committee of the People's National Party, Norman Minot, has confirmed that these NWU delegates will be added to the voters' list in time for them to cast their ballots for the next president of the People's National Party. Lisa Hanna, who is currently the Member of Parliament for Senan Southeastern, is one of the two candidates who will be challenging for the presidency of the People's National Party. Ms. Hanna raised concerns about whether the list of delegates that was submitted by the National Workers' Union was eligible for admission for inclusion on the PNP's voters list. She will be challenging St. Andrew Southern Member of Parliament Mark Golding for the presidency of the PNP. The NWU had responded with some caustic statements and had mentioned that Lisa Hanna was not ready for the presidency. Of course, the National Workers' Union is in full support of Mark Golding and his presidential campaign, and they are showing a very united front. So therefore, it seems all of these 36 votes from the National Workers' Union may be going towards Mark Golding, because they did not like the way that Lisa Hanna and her campaign spokesperson, Donna Scott Motley, handled the situation. According to the NWU at the time, there are protocols in place, and the way that Lisa Hanna and her presidential campaign team handled the matter was nothing short of a political gaffe. Statements coming from Chairman Minot are that the concerns were centered around the provisions of Section 16(1)(c) of the Trade Union Act, which requires local unions to file a list of members by August 1st annually. He further mentioned that the supporters of Lisa Hanna made it clear that they were seeking clarification on that provision. Minot further stated that he looked at it carefully and they decided that this section was not prohibitive or that it could not, when properly interpreted, serve to justify the delegates being kept out of the presidential elections or off the PNP's voters list. 6 days before approximately 3,400 delegates are scheduled to vote for a new PNP president, the race between Lisa Hanna and Mark Golding is currently seeming to be very close, and the heat that is being generated is very hot. The findings of a new poll suggest that Lisa Hanna is not in such a great position as Mark Golding is catching up to her. The poll was commissioned by Mark Golding's presidential camp, and it was conducted by Anderson and his team. Lisa Hanna was a choice for 46.2% of respondents, and they were asked to name the person that they would prefer to lead the People's National Party at this moment. Mark Golding was not far behind with his percentage of respondents, as he received 45% of the respondents identifying him as their choice to take over from Dr. Peter Phillips. Almost 45.2% of the respondents selected Mark Golding. In response to the question, Mark Golding is the former Justice Minister, and of course he led Lisa Hanna by 45.9% to her 45.3% when respondents were asked to name the person that they believe is best suited to lead the PNP, based on a list of qualities that were identified. This poll was conducted on October 24th over a 5-day period, and there were 1,077 persons who were asked to respond to these questions. And these persons were selected from across all 14 parishes of Jamaica. Lisa Hanna has not made a decision about choosing Peter Bunting or Norman Horne for the vacant Senate position that exists in the upper house for the opposition party. Lisa Hanna, who is currently one of the People's National Party's leadership candidates, has remained non-committal about whether she would make Senate appointments available to either Peter Bunting or Norman Horne. She has mentioned that all options remain on the table. Lisa Hanna, who was responding to questions, further mentioned that although she appreciates and respects the position that was taken by former party treasurer Norman Horne in foregoing a Senate appointment, based on the fact that he believes a new leader should be given the opportunity to select a team of his or her own choosing, a decision would be made once they have passed the presidential elections. Hanna stated that I have not mentioned publicly what I would do, as I believe we have to first get over the hurdle of the leadership race. I have not taken a decision as to whether I would ask or want the current slate of senators to resign. I have not made up my mind on that. And Horne had made a decision to forego being sworn in as a senator after being selected by Dr. Peter Phillips as one of the PNP's 8 senators to sit in the Parliament's upper house on the opposition benches. Opposition leader Dr. Peter Phillips had mentioned that his intention was to vacate office when the People's National Party selects a new president on November 7th. Norman Horne, who was in quarantine at the time of the swearing-in in September, was not sworn in and was scheduled to be sworn in October. However, he issued a message that if he were to accept being sworn in on October 16th, this would be in contradiction with his convictions, as he believed that resigning from the Senate on November 6, 2020 would have been his decision, in an effort to allow the new leader of the PNP to appoint its own senators. Norman Horne further went on to state that I will therefore be communicating to the Governor General and the leader of the opposition my desire not to be sworn in at this time, just a few weeks from November 6, 2020. Lisa Hanna, while not saying whether she would consider former leadership aspirant Bunting, who surprisingly lost his central Manchester seat to the Jamaica Labour Party's Rhoda Crawford in the September 3rd parliamentary elections, has mentioned that we will see what happens when we get there. Therefore, Lisa Hanna is waiting to see if she will take over the leadership reins of the People's National Party before making a solid statement or decision about choosing Norman Horne or Peter Bunting for the vacant Senate position. Or is it that she has another candidate in mind for this Senate position? Lisa Hanna is going up against Mark Golding for the leadership of the PNP following a sweep by the Jamaica Labour Party at the last national polls on September 3rd. Approximately 3,400 delegates of the party will make a decision about who becomes the next president of the People's National Party. Of course, I would say that Lisa Hanna needs to make a statement on this matter at this time, as it may affect her going into the presidential polls. She needs not to be seen as somebody who is wavering. She needs to be seen as unwavering. And of course, Mark Golding has made a decision. He has mentioned that first, he would not be ruling out Bunting for the Senate position that is currently vacant in the Parliament's upper house. And he has mentioned that he would not be asking the current senators to resign from their position. However, as it stands, Ms. Hanna is not sure about what it is that she will do or not do. Or maybe she has chosen not to disclose her decision. But still, it needs to be said and it needs to be mentioned so that persons in the Senate can have an idea of where they will stand as of November 7th. And she needs to make a decision about who will sit in that vacant position in the Senate on the opposition benches. Do you agree with her? It seems as well that she is maintaining her stance on not disclosing every single detail about her decisions or about internal party affairs. Of course, like, comment, share, and subscribe. Leave your comments down below and let me know if you are in agreement with the PNP's Internal Appeals Committee and Lisa Hanna.